facilitated nearly 2,000 workshops since 2004 on the fundamentals of effective money management. He based his first book, Everyday Money for Everyday People, published in 2014, on the discussions, tips, stories, and ideas shared by the tens of thousands of individuals and couples in attendance. And I am here to welcome my friend, Todd Christensen. Todd looks like he's working on the microphone.
All right. Thanks again. It is good to be here, and it sounds like my voice is really loud. Is that true? Okay. All right. So last night we were here to set up, and we went looking for our room, and we thought we found it a couple of rooms down. I thought, okay, this will work. And I walk in, and this is the one that's twice as big. So doing okay, trying to keep my nerve down. Good to have you here. Congratulations, first of all. Congratulations for being here. And why I say congratulations is, and I kind of disagree with this figure, but I heard one speaker say that you are among the 10%, top 10% of people who want to improve their lives. Why do we know that? Because you're here. I think it's much smaller percentage than that. I mean, if you think of everybody who could be here, your friends, family members, some of you brought friends and family members, which is awesome. They're not here. You guys made sure that you got here, that you got registered in that 25-minute time frame, and you're here. And raise your hand if this is at least your second or third or 12th. This is awesome. Can you give somebody else a chance? No. Just what it says is a great opportunity, and you guys know the value coming here. So this is about my 5th or 6th time speaking here at the Boise Center, at the Boise one. I've been up to the Moscow one as well. So we are going to talk about debt today, and it can be a pretty personal issue. So to start off, I'm going to start with confession. I am not a smart woman. But I was smart enough to marry a very smart woman. And stay married to a very smart woman. I have a very smart daughter, and I have a wonderful, I have one sister. And she's got to be smart, because she was the oldest and she had 7 brothers. Smart. And she knows how to endure. And my mother, okay, so I've been surrounded my whole life by smart women. So, debt, holy cow. How fun is it to come to a class and let's talk about debt? Yeah. Now, I want you to kind of turn, just look down the road. There might be 4 or 5 in the same row. There might be 15, 25, 30. Don't assume just because they're here. Don't look at them and go, I wonder how much debt they have. Just because you're here doesn't mean that you have debt. Okay? You're here for your brother, your sister, your mom, your kids, right? Let's just put everybody at ease for that. Okay. So let's just get into it. What is the worst thing that you can imagine that can result from debt? Having too much debt. Homelessness. That can lead there.
Your wages could get garnished.
Garnished wages. Right? And more. I mean, it can go on. Here's some things that can happen. Pretty common things that happen with debt. Bankruptcy. Late fees, foreclosure, collections. And when I go into classes and talk about credit, that's one of my other favorite things to talk about is rebuilding credit. And I'm a walker, so I hope you guys up in front don't get dizzy trying to... I'm over here. I'll ask the question, which one of these is the worst thing that happens to your credit? They're all bad. And for every one of you, one of these might be worse than the other. For you, it might be a foreclosure. I don't want to lose the house. Bankruptcy may not be as big of a deal. For somebody else, I just can't file for bankruptcy, or I can't deal with collections anymore. But really, what is the worst thing that you can imagine coming out of being in debt? I mean, what are the daily things you have to deal with if you're in a lot of debt? And it's not just the money. It's not a money thing. Well, okay. You all want to say it together? Stress. All right. Wow. Let's see. If you got just about, you can think about a lot of different emotions. It's a very difficult emotional issue to deal with. I've been teaching classes, being a financial educator for the last 14 years. Such a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to do what I love to do. I said I was not a smart woman. I was not really a smart guy as far as money goes when I was younger. 21 years old, got my first credit card. They sent me one of those offers in the mail. I was in college, and a $2,000 credit limit. I was making maybe $200 or $300 a month. And so I get that card, and what do I think? Free money. And I believe I got it on a Wednesday morning in the mail, and by Thursday afternoon it was maxed out. $2,000. And I was in credit card debt my entire 20s. Paying credit card interest, hiding from credit card collection calls. So I've been there, done that, and the reason I love what I do is because I want others not to have to go through that. That's 10 years. A decade is 10 years, right? 20 years. That's 10 years I'll never get back. If I had instead started investing, I'd be in a much better place now. I love what I do, but I'd like others not to have to go through what I do. I am a bankruptcy counselor. Before somebody files for bankruptcy, they have to go see a nonprofit credit counseling agency to get a counseling certificate. And I've been doing that for a couple of years, and so I have a really unique insight into why people go into bankruptcy and what some of the commonalities are. But we have been doing this for 13 years, and I asked the people going through them, asked to do a survey, why are you filing for bankruptcy? What do you think the number one reason people file for bankruptcy? People who have gone through divorce are going to say divorce, right? People who haven't gone through divorce are like, I don't know, why is that such a big deal? Absolutely, it's in the top 4. So, these are self-reported. This is not what you're going to find in statistics by people who are studying financial details. Because what you hear on the media is it's medical. Most bankruptcies have medical debt in them. So people are filing for bankruptcy because of medical issues. That's not the same thing as why they're filing for bankruptcy. You can have the doctor's $100 or $1,000 you owe to a dentist, and you can include that in a bankruptcy. That doesn't mean that's why you're filing for bankruptcy. Plus, you're probably not going to want to go back to that dentist and then put sharp instruments in your mouth and doing some work on your teeth. But main reason people say it's lost my job. And so a lot of people say, oh, I couldn't help it, I have to file for bankruptcy. What can we do to minimize the likelihood of having to file for bankruptcy if we lose our job? That's a 4-letter word. Save. That's crazy. But that's the easiest way to minimize. Now there are some expenses and extended job loss, unemployment, that you can't have enough money to save for that. But so job loss by far. That's number 2, just poor money management. So when I get a phone call from somebody, or people will put all their information in our online program, and then I'll see it before I call them to do a final budget briefing. And if I see a $350 cell phone bill and a $600 car payment, I usually know which one of these I'm dealing with. But that's very common. I also know that they're using Verizon phone. Verizon is not one of our sponsors here today. But they got great service, I guess. Okay, so yeah, job loss, poor money management, then medical, then divorce, I think addictions is pretty well, it's probably understandable, it's well underreported. People are generally not going to say they're filing because of addiction, but I would guess it's going to be in the 7-8% range. All the different types of debt. So here you go. I heard 5, I got 10. Back child support is a debt. Car title loans, car loans, court fines and restitutions. None of you here came up with that. Court supervision, judgments, medical debts, mortgage, payday loans. Option 1, here's the option that most people, almost everybody tries. Very first thing to do when you have debt, what do you think the first thing people do first for dealing with debt? What? Stop spending? Not going out to dinner? No, it's even before that. Really go way before that. I know I got debt, but really, is it that bad? Maybe they've forgotten about me. I haven't heard from these creditors for 2 months. What do they say? If you ever wonder if somebody cares about you, miss a couple of credit card payments, right? Yeah. So ignorance is bliss until debt gets involved. Okay, so this is not an option. Debt does not go, oh, they forgot about me. No, they didn't forget about you. Now, if it's a small amount of debt, they may not pursue you. But if it's big enough, or if they don't like you, or whatever, they may end up trying to take you to court, get a judgment against you, then take your portion of your wages and garnishment up to 25%, unless it's child support, then 50%, maybe even 60%. Take your tax refund. So they're not going to forget. Think about it. Have you ever lent money to somebody, a significant amount of money to somebody? Do you forget that? We may not want to say, calling them up all the time because, hey, Dad, remember you owe me all that money? No, that doesn't happen. Companies that have databases and reminders, they're not forgetting. They're just trying to figure out the best way to get the money back that we used and spent. Here's briefly what happens when you try to ignore it. Creditors get involved. Okay? They are going to add fees. They might sell that account to collections. There might be that lawsuit. It's certainly going to get reported or credit report. Now let me split a couple of things. Understand, because I got a lot of people that come to us saying, I need to get out of debt, but I don't want it to hurt my credit. Because we know that debt and credit they impact each other, but they're not the same goal. And so I have to say, okay, what's your goal? Do you want to get out of debt, or do you want to stay in a lot of debt and keep golden credit? Because you can have great credit and have a ton of debt. And you can get out of all your debt and have terrible credit. Or you can kind of work together and kind of minimize the impact of each of them. But what is your goal? If it's to get out of debt, too many of us worry about the credit thing. And granted, there are some reasons to worry about credit. I'll talk. That's a whole other class. Come back next year. All right, I'll be there. All right, let's get involved with the courts. You get a summons, or you don't get a summons. You may have moved. A lot of people find out they have a judgment just by checking the credit report. Where did that judgment come from? They couldn't find you, they won the default judgment. Now they can, now whoever the creditor is, with that judgment, they have a lot more options. They can now get in touch with your employer and garnish your wages. Bad credit, in fact, can even be an issue in getting a job. Yes, it can. So it's an issue. And then, of course, a certain property, if it's debt related to property, home, vehicles, we're talking about repossession and foreclosure. So this is the result, for good or for bad, actually for bad only, of ignoring debt. It will grow and get worse. All right, so let's just say that we all agree trying to ignore debts is a bad idea. So let's talk about idea number 2. And I'm going in order at this point, after the first one, bad idea. I'm doing an order of, where should we start? What's the first place we should start? And I believe the first place to start, if you want to pay off your debt, is to do it on your own. Do it yourself. Crazy. I work for a nonprofit credit counseling agency, so take what I say with a grain of salt, understanding that I think we do a great service. But I'm going to try and be as real as possible, be honest as I can. And just up front, here's what I think the benefits of each of these options are and the disadvantages. So, but paying off on your own, this encompasses a million different ways of paying off on your own. Of course, you can start with paying just the minimum payment on a credit card, on a store card, setting up arranging payments with a collection account or doctor's office, and then making minimum payments. The advantages to minimum payments: you're building your credit. Yeah, that on-time payments is the number one thing you can do to build your credit. I had some questions as people come through my table. What can I do to build my credit in a hurry? First of all, beware, be careful. That attitude, that urgency leads people to hire companies and pay them $1,500 to do something they can do for yourself for free. Okay, so you can't really build your credit in a hurry. It takes a year, it takes 2 years to really make some good progress. But number one thing, make your minimum payments on time every month. That's an advantage. Eventually you'll be paid off. That's another advantage. Eventually, as Treasurer Crane mentioned earlier, even a small $2,000 credit card debt, minimum payments can take 13, 15 years. Anything over that, it can go up to 25 years to pay off your debt. So, which means the longer you take to pay it off, and the higher your interest, of course, the more interest you're going to pay over time. Soon after I got that first $2,000 credit card and maxed it out, your estimation of me is just going to plummet. So, they said it's a $50 monthly payment. I'm like, yeah, because I got a keyboard, I got a professional grade keyboard, and I got studio monitors. I blew one out within a week. And I was going to be like Jagger. So I say that in high schools, and they're like, that old guy. I'm like, yeah, he was even old back when I was young. And I got $50 for my future. And I sent out $50. And 2 weeks later, I had to call up my credit union and just to make sure my check had actually gone through. This was back in the day before the internet, literally before I'd ever heard of the internet. And I found out, okay, my $50 check had gone through. Yay, I'm going to go, and I tried to buy about $15 worth of groceries. And it was declined. Do you remember back in the day, this was like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when you'd swipe the card, and it would be like, reading, calling. Oh, dialing. Connecting. And it would take literally 60 seconds before you knew. And that whole time, it was like Jeopardy. I'm like, I'm starting to sweat. Is it going to be declined? And it was declined. I was so mad. I called up that company and I said, how dare you? I know you took my $50. And I can't even buy $15 worth of groceries. I'm a poor college student. Nothing worked. And when you're 21 years old and somebody on the other line of customer service says, well, Mr. Christensen, I'm like, oops, they just call me Mr. Christensen. I'm kind of feeling stupid right now. I said, of that $50, 48 of it went to the interest. Thank you. Minimum payments. Takes forever. You're going to pay a lot of interest. So minimize that. Try something else. Okay. This is a roundup. We call it a roundup method. It's really easy. If they ask for $23.18, you can either round it up to $24. You can round up your minimum payment to $25. You can round it up to the nearest $5. Just round it up. Round it up to something. Anything you can pay above the minimum payment will bring down the amount of debt, of interest that you pay over time, and it will get you paid off sooner. Now, I'm going to go back here. Stop using your credit cards, right? Now, I thought that was a great idea, except that the way I lived, I lived 1 month behind my income. Okay. I used my credit card, and then the next month, I paid the minimum payment, but I was using my credit card during the month to pay for food and everything. And so if I stopped using my credit card, I couldn't pay checks. I can use checks, they would bounce. And then there's another $25, $35 fee. I couldn't get out cash because all my bills had already been paid. And so sometimes you have to make a plan on how am I going to stop using these. So there is a method of doing that. But you can do the roundup method. Another really easy way, some people say, I can't round up. I have like 3 cents left over after I pay all my bills and my minimum payments. Okay, well, next month, after you make your minimum payment, this month, next month's minimum payment is going to be about $1.25 less. Don't go down. Keep it at this month's minimum payment. And so, from now on until that credit card is paid off, pay today's minimum payment, this month's minimum payment, until you pay it off. Because after a while, let's say today's minimum payment is $175. In a year, they may be only asking for $45. You're still sending $175. And instead of 15 years to 25 years, you're paid off in 6 years. And you pay a lot less interest. So I call that the level pay. And so we like level pay. Idaho Power's here. We like level pay. Okay. So round up, level pay, minimum payment, those are a couple options. Certainly contact your creditor yourself. You can negotiate yourself. Hey, you know what? I've been making payments to you for the last 3.5 years. Been on time for the most part. Pretty good. I still use your card. You're still making money off me. What can we do to lower my interest rate? Just negotiate the interest rate. They don't always do that, but they can if you're in fairly decent standing. Lower interest rate means more of your money will go to paying down the debts. And then what I call power cash. This is the extra money we all have in our household budget. Okay? Everybody, I'm sure if I were to ask you to raise your hand, everybody would raise your hand. How many of you have extra money laying around in your house to send off to... Wait, can I get your addresses? Most people say, all my money's already gone by the end of the month. So power cash is this. You look at how much you're spending every month on certain expenses, discretionary expenses. Groceries. Groceries is discretionary? You have to spend money on food. Well, not have to, I guess it can be on assistance, but you have to have food. But do you have to buy this much food? Or do you have to spend it on this type of food items? So groceries, gift giving. I married a gift giver. I'm smart. But that's a discretionary expense. How much are you spending on gifts every month on average? How much are you spending on average on dining out, on entertainment, going to movies, watching, renting things from Amazon or Netflix or whatever? They stop renting Netflix. Hulu or from these other places. How much are you spending every month on these type of expenses? And then instead of saying, well, stop spending on that, just say, okay, now that I figured out that I'm spending this much on it, I'm going to just take 10% of that, and I'm going to live on the other 90%. I'm still going to spend 90% on my groceries. But that 10% for most households is going to be $50 to $100 or more. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're normally spending $600 in groceries in our household per month. Now we're going to be spending $540. Does that sound crazy? No. I might have to do a little more work, but we'll just make some adjustments. But that extra $60 can bring that repayment down from 15 years, 12 years to 6 years, can bring it down to less than 3 years. Just an extra $50 on like a $15,000 debt. So $50 is a powerful thing. Power cash. So figure out where you can spend less money. By the way, if you're ever wondering, I know the government, USDA, says that the typical family, individual in this country should be spending, their thrift plan is about $175 per month for food. Oh, man, that would be wonderful in my home. We eat very well. I am fortunate, my wife is fortunate enough that she is a stay-at-home mom and everything else she does to work at home. But she has the time, the extra hour and a half to organize and to make sure that she's getting the best deals. And then if you really want to save money, we have to switch the way we approach grocery shopping. Because a lot of it, I didn't have an approach to grocery shopping when I was younger. I was just like, I'm going and buying whatever looks good when I get there. That's why if you shop at 4:30 or 5 o'clock on your way home from work, what's just coming out of the bakery at the store? The fresh French bread, right? Everything smells good at that point. So, one, people say, well, I'm going to make a plan then. I'm going to make a menu, and then I'm going to go shopping for those ingredients. Great idea. If you really want to start saving money, you have to flip that around. You find the deals first, you load up on that food, and you make the menu based on that. It doesn't work for everybody. You have to usually have some freezer space and some pantry space and so forth. But I have a whole other class on that too. I have a class on everything. I'll just be here. I'll be here tomorrow. Anybody want to come join me tomorrow? All right, so option 2, you yourself. You save money. You're not paying anybody fees. You're getting out of debt pretty fast. Let's talk about option 3. Now, this is where third parties start getting involved. And no surprise, I'm going to be talking about credit counseling agencies. And the reason I can justify putting credit counseling here is because the 2005 bankruptcy law, which changed some of the laws in bankruptcy, also specified that if you were going to file for bankruptcy, you have to see a credit counselor first. The idea that we can probably help some people minimize the possibility of continuing the bankruptcy. What I find in reality is by the time people say that they think they have to file for bankruptcy, 99.9% of them are so far into debt because there was a lot of that option number 1 going on that there's not a whole lot that I can do for them. But here's what credit counseling is. Well, let me say what it's not. We are not, and we're just one of over 100 credit counseling agencies in the country. Credit counseling agent can be done online, it can be done by phone, it can be done in person. We happen to be the one in this valley with a physical location. There's another one in Twin Falls, Rural Dynamics, and they also acquired the one in Moscow, and then there's Money Management International North. I trust any credit counseling agency that you find that belongs to FCAA.org, it's Federal Financial Counseling Association of America, or NFCC.org, National I don't know what it stands for. National Foundation for Credit Counseling. As long as we belong to one of those two, I trust that organizations are doing what they're supposed to do. Because every single one of those, when I started 14 years ago, there were over 800 of us. So 14 years, we've gone from about 850 down to just barely 100. Why is that? Because just over 15 years ago, just before I started, my boss, the guy that hired me, he said, what do you know about our industry? I said, I think I saw you on 2020. And it wasn't good. There were some bad apples in the industry that were making millions of dollars off of the backs of people who were struggling with debt. So the IRS came in or Congress told the IRS, you better do something about it. The IRS went through and audited every single one of them. And so every single one of them has we've now either gone through and successfully proven that we're a nonprofit like we're supposed to, doing what we're supposed to, or they're no longer around. So I trust those who are still on it. Okay, we're not the ones advertising in the middle of the night. Did you know that President Trump just signed into law that you only have to pay 50% of what you owe on your credit card? Oh, come on, you've heard those, right? You're staying up too late, that's... Okay? Okay, so that's step 7, and actually I'm going to talk about that in step 4. Credit counseling. Here's what credit counseling is. Okay, there's a sign-up process. Credit counseling works with people who have dealing with high interest rates or fees, late fees, over-limit fees, collection accounts. There's an enrollment fee. Every state is different. Every state has their own fee capped. And in Idaho, I think it's $75 to enroll. There are hardship waivers and hardship reductions as well for people who can't afford that. To be honest, most people who get to this point, there are quite a few who are on fixed income, but many just need that help with the discipline. And so there's a lot of middle income, and even I've sat with people who are making $20,000 a month. And I've sat with people who are making $20,000 a year, both extremes. So, but there is that enrollment fee. What we do is we help. We work with our creditors to lower their interest rates. These are the same accounts that we're not giving them a new loan. It's a payment consolidation, not a loan consolidation. I didn't mention loan consolidation on option 2, because loan consolidation is pretty tough to actually go through. Where you go into a bank and say, hey, I've got all these debts I can't pay. Can you give me one loan to pay all those off, and I'll pay you? In our mind, that sounds logical. If someone's coming to you and says, hey, could you pay off all the debts I can't pay, and then I'll pay you? What are you going to think? Like, well, sounds kind of risky. If you're already having trouble paying them, no. So that's true debt consolidation, a loan consolidation or consolidation loan. It can work for some people if your credit is not bad. But sometimes it can have pretty high interest rates because it's pretty risky. But so we work with the creditors. They already have concessions in place for programs like ours, and we say, okay, you've got 20% interest, we'll lower it down to 3%. Or you've got 30% interest, we'll get that down to 10% or 2% or better. You got a collection account? Okay, let's work it out over the next 12 months, 24 months. Medical debt? Whatever it is. We'll work it out so that your monthly payment is something you can afford, and you'll be out of debt in less than 5 years. It can't be more than 5 years. Okay, so that's step 1. That's kind of what we do. And then while somebody's on the program, their accounts are closed. No, I need that credit card. Don't take that credit card away from me. Oh, yeah. What's your goal? To still walk around with a credit card in your wallet, or to get out of debt? The accounts close, period. We don't want you using debt. We want you out of debt. So that's not a bad thing. I've heard people say, they close your accounts. Yeah. That's how we roll. I know it's crazy. Our clients pay off their debts dollar for dollar. When they come on the program, if they owe $2,000, they're going to pay $2,000. If they owe $15,000, they're going to pay over the time. They're going to pay all $15,000 plus the interest, whatever the interest. But they're going to pay off whatever they owe, 100%. Dollar for dollar. And like I say, it's usually 3 to 5 years. It could be less. There's no prepayment penalty, and that I know of, there's no credit counseling agency that would ever try and penalize somebody for paying off and say, hey, I just sold my home or moving, and it's going to be less than what the house is going to be cheaper. Sorry, that sounds like fantasy, right? You find a cheaper house than what you're in now. But maybe we're downsizing, so we have this extra money and like to pay it off. Do it. Let the company know, and get it paid off. All right, so that's how it works. That's the paying down portion. At the end, here are the rewards for using a credit counseling agency. Because some people think, well, my account's closed, so that's a disadvantage. There is if you have a business, if you own a business, or if you travel a lot, it's hard to rent a car or get a reservation at a hotel without a credit card. And so if you have a card that doesn't have a balance on it, or that has a very low balance, we'll say, okay, that one makes sense. Go ahead and leave that one open. But generally, we try and put all the debts on. Okay, rewards. For 5 years, that sounds like a long time. But for most of us in here, 5 years ago, that was still 2013. That was not very long ago. And the great thing about this, the reward, and I didn't even put it up here, the reward is, what was the worst thing emotionally? Most of you said stress. Stress comes from the feeling that you have no control over your situation. By the time our clients walk out of the office, after having talked with Melissa, she's one of our long-term counselors, and she's downstairs. You ought to introduce yourself to her. She's wonderful, she's awesome. There is a plan, and a feeling of control has been replaced now, or has replaced that stress. And okay, I'm still in debt, but I know that here in the next 3 years, or 2 years, or 5 years, I'm making progress. So that's what credit counseling is. At the end of the program, all those payments, all the creditor is reporting all those payments to the credit bureau. And so you can have 5 years worth of on-time payments. And by the way, all the collection, all the monthly payments are consolidated into one. And so if you have, and we've had clients that have 20, 30 different accounts, that is a full-time job, just trying to remember when everything is due. And so one payment, and then we disperse it to all the creditors. And 5 years of on-time payments. Right after I started this job, I went to a doctor's office, and the gal behind the desk saw my health card and said, "Oh, I am just about to finish my program of debt reduction service." She was really excited. You know, I was still doing nothing. Like, okay, good. I hardly know what we do. Tell me. I went in a few months later, and she said, "Okay, I got to tell you this." She says, "My boyfriend and I just bought a house, or we're trying to buy a house." And the mortgage broker asked for my boyfriend's credit history, and then asked to pull mine. I said, no, I've been dealing with all these debts, and I'm just coming off a credit counseling program. I said, well, let's just check it. She had an 801, which, if you know, goes up to 850. 801, 800 on up is the top 10%. Because she had 5 years of on-time payments and no debt. Those are the 65% of your credit score comes from those things. So that is one of those things that can be rewarded. And there's no lasting indication that our clients were ever on the program. Some creditors, fewer and fewer of them, will put a notation while our clients are on the program saying this person's in a debt management program, a DMP. What that says is, if you're thinking of, if she's applying or he's applying for an account with you, don't do it. Don't let them get into any more debt. They're paying off debts already. Once they're off that program, do whatever you want. But that notation, again, some people say that's a negative. No, we like it there if it's there, but not very many creditors do it anymore. Only 2 or 3 that we know of. We've been tracking for the last year or so. But if it's there, it says, let this person pay off their old debts before you give them any new debts. That's credit counseling. Okay, who's the ideal client? One, they gotta have income. If there's no income in the household, this is not gonna work. Gotta be able to make your payments every month. 2, typically, you either got high APRs on your credit cards, or you have medical debts, or you have collection accounts. They're asking for a lot of money and asking for, trying to collect a lot of high fees right up front, because that's what we can help to lower. And then you gotta be patient. This is not a quick fix. 5 years, it will go fast, and we get people coming in, this is my last payment. I sit right next to the office next to our receptionist, and every once in a while, whenever I hear somebody, I'm making my last payment. It's just fun. Because I go out and say, is your last payment? Yeah. They're so excited, and we're excited for them. Okay. So if you have all 3 of those, ideal. Melissa is downstairs. Okay. Now, like I say, I'm not here to push ours, except here's our shameless plug. Okay. This is our site. Visit our table. Call one of our counselors. See us. See another credit counselor. See a credit counselor. If you're like, I've tried on my own, your next stop is a credit counseling agency. Please don't believe what your neighbor tells you. Oh, those credit counseling agents are evil. Actually, don't call them credit counseling agents. They'll say, no, don't go say debt counselor. Debt counselor is such a generic term. It doesn't mean anything. Nobody knows what a debt counselor is, because you can be debt settlement, you can be credit counselor. You can call anybody who calls us a debt counselor. It's not owned by anybody. Okay. So let's get to option 4. This is that debt settlement I talked about. This is where you sign up. You're late. Typically, you're really late on your debts, and they're asking you that it's gone to collections, or about to go to collections, and they're threatening lawsuits. Debt settlement company. You can do this on your own, by the way. You can call a debt creditor and say, "Hey, I owe you $2,000. Will you accept $1,000?" Except what's the problem with that? If I had $1,000, would I not have been making payments to begin with? But I'll tell you who the ideal client is. But if you go with the debt settlement company, they will have administrative fees as well. they'll ask you to tell the creditors to stop contacting you, in which they have to by law. If you send them a letter saying don't contact me, they're going to have to stop contacting you. Except they might get their legal department involved and contact you through the courts. So you start paying the debt settlement company, and then eventually they'll add on their fee, because they're building your balances as you pay them. And then eventually after a year or 2 or 3, they'll offer 50% of what you originally owed on that debt and try and bring it, get the creditor to accept that. If you add, and that sounds when it's successful, which is, I've heard it as low as 4% success rates. But when it is successful, yeah, you've just paid off half of what they accepted half of it. But when you start adding not only the fees that they were adding, because they are going to charge their fees, but, and if they don't do it right, the amount that you didn't pay can come back 10, 20 years later. It's called zombie debt or phantom debt. Credit's so bad, you're going to have high interest rates, but you're going to have to pay taxes. Or you're going to get a 1099-C if it's over $600, I think it is. I'm not a CPA, though, so don't believe anything I say either. But you add on the amount of taxes you have to pay on that and all the fees, and it usually ends up being about 75 to 80% or higher anyway. So, the ideal client, you have to have a pile of money. Maybe it's tax refund time. Maybe you just got an inheritance. Maybe you just sold something and you have some money and you can offer an amount. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense to pay somebody for the next year or two to do it for you. You should, at this point, you're really not going to care about your credit. Most people going to debt settlement don't, because it's already shot. And you need it in a hurry. Time crunch. Last one, let's get to option number 5, bankruptcy. Okay, so crash course in bankruptcy. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving any legal advice here. But it is a legal action taken in federal court. Our federal court here is in Boise. It's on 4th Street. It's for individuals and or bankruptcy or businesses. You can be an individual with your own business and file for bankruptcy. There is no such thing, by the way, as a medical bankruptcy. Raise your hand if you've heard, file for medical bankruptcy. You ever heard the term medical bankruptcy? No such thing. Not in the courts anyway. There's personal bankruptcies is Chapter 7, trying to get rid of all your debt. Or Chapter 13, where you repay some of it over the next 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years. Those are the personal bankruptcies, okay? And bankruptcy's purpose is to protect your assets. 3 main assets that most people want to protect. Number 1 thing, when they file for bankruptcy, they want to protect their home. They're getting ready to lose their home, they're worried to lose their home. They file for bankruptcy. Foreclosure, they can stop foreclosure until bankruptcy all gets settled out. You can rework that or reaffirm that mortgage so you can stay in the home and not have to lose all those memories. Well, I guess not turn them into memories. But you can keep your home. You can keep a certain amount of personal property. Every state has a different amount of property that you can keep. So property, home, vehicle, I'm not a huge fan. And this is what drives me crazy when somebody has $2,000 of income, they have a $600 car payment. And I ask them, are you planning on keeping your car after bankruptcy? Yeah, I've had that car for 2 years. I love that car. Okay, well, that's more than a quarter of you're not making money at work until you've been there for almost 3 hours, because for the first 3 hours, you're just earning money to be able to get to work in the car and get home. I love that car. Okay? But you're protecting a vehicle or protecting the other asset is your income. You can get rid of, a lot of people will file for bankruptcy because they have judgments and their wages are getting garnished. And so if you file for bankruptcy, sometimes you can get rid of those. Things you can't get rid of in bankruptcy. Anybody already know that? What are some things you cannot get rid of in bankruptcy? Student loans. To get rid of a student loan, you have to prove complete disability today and that it's permanent, that you'll never be able to earn money to repay those. 2, taxes. Taxes. I've heard of taxes being included in bankruptcy. It depends how old they are and how much they are. But typically, if it's fairly recent, you cannot include that whirlwind tour of Europe that you use on your credit card. because the trustees will go back and they'll look and see, okay, where's this $5,000 credit card purchases come from? Anything related to childcare, familial obligations, can't get rid of them. That's kind of just not going to happen ever. Mostly it. Medical, yeah. A lot of people are surprised. I didn't think I could file bankruptcy on medical debt. Absolutely, that's one of the main things in there. State rest. Oh, so let's hear it. Here we go. I'm gonna get. Oh, where? Might as well show that. It is. You can't get rid of domestic support, recent back taxes, criminal restitution, probation stuff, anything related to court. Let's just say this: if it's owed to or through the government, not happening, right? Or it's going to be tough to do. So let's do this. Let me just show you the last thing here. Somebody who's filing for bankruptcy probably had to have some assets. You better have some assets to protect, otherwise sometimes it's expensive. You're going to have to pay $1,500 to file for bankruptcy if you're going to use an attorney in this valley or more. And you can rebuild your credit within a few years. It just takes a lot of extra work. Okay, so here's the match game 2018. There's the different types of debts over there on the left. If you notice, every single one of those types of debts, self-pay is one of the options, and usually the best option. Not everything can be used with the credit counseling or debt settlement, and again, I'll say, feel free to let me know. Send me an email, and I will email you this PowerPoint so you can see what these are. And the last one here, tax obligations. You can pay your tax obligations on any one of those options there. Appreciate it. Have a good day.